So I want to continue on what I was saying yesterday and continue on the introspective journey so that way we can get to the fun. So thank you, universe, for the feedback to smile. Yes, I am feeling great. Yes, this is awesome. There have definitely been some turbulent times, but what I wish to convey to you is that it is wonderful, happy, blissful state that I'm in, and the journey that I shared is, by all intents and purposes, should be considered as a blissful one, at least a happily ever after, at least to this point. And I'm sure the duration of the time here will be blissful as well as what comes next. So yesterday I was talking about the journey and path from a very logic-based perspective of the different realms of what some people might call reality, or what I call different operating systems, operating software that we hold in order to interact with life, with reality. And we had talked about, I'd shared a bit about my journey and growth from understanding and recognizing that there was more to life than simply logic, or at least what was being told as what is a logic-based reality was showing certain deviations from the model that it should, such as the subprime mortgage crisis of '09 was like a 6 standard deviation occurrence, yet it happened, right? So it's reality. How do we address it, and how do we assess it? Well, oftentimes you got to go back and you got to change the model when what you observe is different from that. And I shared with you a bit of the exploration of how there's more to life than just logic, and my journey in that started from a very cathartic experience of a loss, or sudden loss of a loved one, or a relationship, that led me to searching and sticking to the scientific method to continue to explore what really was the depth of reality, one that my own experience needed to match with. The model that I would have, or that I have, or I learn, needs to account for these experiences. And oftentimes, a lot of philosophers or spiritual leaders are asked some of these questions, like, why does God do bad things to good people? Why is there death? Why is there pain? Why is there suffering? And those are logic-based questions based off of observations, and what people are doing is trying to find an answer and understand how that could be based off of what's in their internal operating system and their software. And oftentimes the answers that I've received has not been satisfactory, or they've been very superficial or surface layer, or from another perspective, it didn't resonate with me. It didn't sink in as true as truth. It may be on the surface like, okay, sure, I guess, yeah, I'll take your word for it because of the position you're in and how other people are respecting what you're saying, and they're nodding and saying, yeah, this is right, this is right. But for me, it didn't resonate, and that's sort of that like gut feeling of like, oh, yeah, that's truth. And so what I did was I took a perspective of the human body as the primary navigation tool to uncover and understand what was happening in reality that I was observing. So that way, when it came time to create that model, update my model, my operating software inside of me, I could be like, okay, well, yeah, these are true experiential points that I have experienced, and so this model accounts for that and more. And so that's the journey that I was sharing yesterday, and how it took me from studying the brain and reading about the future of the brain by some of the world's top neuroscientists, neurobiologists, computer science people, talking about the 3D mapping of the brain, and how our Western approach towards understanding the body and reality, while maybe not inaccurate, and in many cases very accurate, it created certain deviations or things that they even self-recognize as needing to be explored further before being able to fully express confidence in understanding what's going on. That being the 3D mapping of the brain and all the wirings, and why does mine wire differently than yours. And so then I mentioned 40 years of Zen, which is a really interesting spot. And of course, what's great about the Western system is there's lots of money and resources and energy being diverted to understanding this, understanding our brain. And then one other thing is, is I was looking from a human perspective, and that got me into the brain, into the body. And then I also looked at the macro perspectives, what was happening with the economy, with companies, with all the startups that were happening, with different countries and their evolution, the earth as a whole, what's going on, certain metrics that we can monitor and measure as a whole, including things like carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and temperature, and water levels, and populations of specific species. And of course, the controversy with that is the accuracy and validity of those measurements. Are they being tampered with? Are they not being tampered with? And regardless of that, at least these are certain macro indicators. Even things like the United Nations, as potentially flawed and filled with controversy as that organization may have, it still has a very interesting perspective on how humanity and Earth and civilization and countries are being evolved, and what things are important for society to succeed and to thrive, at least from a political, societal, economic perspective, let alone a spiritual perspective. And so I was looking at that layer, and then I was looking at astrophysicists and people studying the universe and what was going on there. So even bigger than the Earth, what was going on with the universe and what they were saying. And a lot of the top scientists in those fields had, some of them clearly have ego involved in it and in their theories and thoughts, which, hey, it's their life work, and they're very committed to putting out a theory, and that's how they get rewarded and they succeed, is to be very adamant about their perspective. And that's part of the scientific method. You put out a hypothesis and you do whatever you can to disprove it. And if you haven't disproven it, you start to become more believing in it. But a lot of these scientists were talking about how what was going on with the universe was more a recognition of a model of consciousness and a theory of consciousness than it was of anything else. And then that opened up my historical exploration of science in general, and it brought me back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s of Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Wilhelm Reich, and a lot of these other scientists that were given less fame and attention. And a lot of what they were talking about was consciousness, and how when the science community grapples with or gets to that level where they can start to see that science can be expanded by embracing certain conscious thought patterns, spiritual thought patterns, then humanity would advance incredibly. And so, okay, you've got astrophysicists talking about consciousness as a model. You've got these old, incredible scientists that we all revere talking about consciousness. And when I talked about the exploration of the human body, I talked about looking at other modalities and talking about traditional Chinese medicine, Japanese homeopathic medicine, Indian Ayurvedic medicine, even some indigenous tribal medicine and theories and how they approach things. And while my exploration in those areas haven't been as rigorous or deep as the other ones, I do honor them and want to acknowledge them. What I'm specifically saying is from my experience, what I explored was traditional Chinese medicine, the meridians, the meridian pathways, and testing them and seeing how specific organs were associated with specific demonstrated emotions or unbalanced emotions. I talked about the liver with anger. I talked about gallbladder with indecision, and how these home tests were just very clear that, well, yeah, if I account for the persuasive, manipulative, seductive tactics that may have been put into these tests, or that the skeptic in me, just the scientific skeptic, the one who wants to be as impartial as possible, looks at it and removes all those factors. Well, actually, yeah, there is something to these meridians. There's something to these organs, and I was talking about the thyroid, right? And well, of course, to repeat, sorry, I get all scratchy looking at myself. It's kind of funny. I'm kind of like a cat or something. Meow, meow. Anyway, I'm a Leo. I was born in July, late July, so excuse my cat-like tendencies here. But anyway, the thyroid was one of those where they wanted to say something, but they didn't say it to the person they wanted to, so they had to say it to someone else when they were drunk, or had a few glasses in them, or they would just take what people said and not speak back. And sure enough, those were people who had thyroid issues. And what I saw was when I moved from traditional Chinese medicine to studying Ayurvedic medicine and yoga, about these different energy centers in the body, and how the thyroid relates to the throat chakra, the Vishuddhi chakra, I think. My Sanskrit is in need of improvement, we'll just put it that way. And so, okay, well, yeah, maybe there's a throat chakra thing. Maybe throat chakra is a shorthand for referring to people, kind of like, oh, he's a frat bro, or, he's a biohacker, or, she's into Burning Man. I don't know, things like that. Maybe it was a shorthand thing. I was like, okay, yeah, cool. You got a thyroid thing, it's visible. Sure, we can say you have a throat issue thing, a throat chakra thing. And so that was the bit of sort of the meridians and the energy centers. And then I went into body work and body healing. And I grew up playing soccer, and I love flag football. And I would just put my heart and soul into all the sports and all the competition. And ultimately what would happen is my body would not be well taken care of. I wouldn't be doing stretching, or wouldn't cool down properly. I was in the age of go, 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 go. Even at that point, I was working out quite a lot, and doing it really destructively almost. I fit in the category of weekend warrior. The person who sits at a day job, for Monday through Friday, and then Saturday comes and all right, let's go run a Tough Mudder, let's go run a Spartan race, let's go play some flag football. And I did that, but then my body would would break down. And so what I realized was I needed to take care of my body because I couldn't run anymore, and that was my outlet and my competition. And so what happened was the psychological impact of being a little depressed and the logical desire to figure that out fused with the desire to actually do something about my body because my body was breaking down. And so I started to look at how I could get help, and I went through the Western medicine system, went through some incredible doctors, but the solution for that was not helpful, to be honest. It wasn't helpful. I mean, they were helpful. They were trying to be as helpful as possible. But they had a specific instrument, and it didn't work in that case. You know, for a man with a hammer, every situation looks like a nail. Basically being like, oh, here, I have the solution, I have the solution. And so, you know, knee braces weren't good for me. I tried orthopedic insoles, weren't good for me. And if they're good for you, awesome, it's great. But it weren't good for me. It wasn't working. I mean, it was to that point where I had a brace for my quads. I had a brace for my knees. I had like the little strap for the Osgood Slaughter thing for the lower kneecap. I looked like a bionic person. And I was like, that's not going to work for me. Because I couldn't even, at the end of these games, I couldn't even walk down the stairs. And I was like, okay, well, I think I need my body. I mean, at this point, I didn't really value my body as much as I did my brain because I was being rewarded through how smart I was, not through how athletic I was or physically capable I was. But then I started to realize that, hey, this is the only body I got for as long as I'm going to be here. And I put a lot of energy and attention into this, so I want to make sure this can hold up with it. And so I looked at a chiropractor. I went on my coupon to go to a chiropractor, and he did some things cracking my back, and he did some sort of like machine with vibrational electricity going through it. He did like a hot cold thing, and it worked for a while. It worked really well. But then I would go back and play football and like destroy my body. And so then I was like, okay, well, maybe someone's like, oh, maybe you should get some body work, get a massage. And I would actually get massages with my mom. It was kind of like a mother-son bonding thing. We played bowling before, we would go get ice cream before, but now we're getting massages. So I was like, okay, I'll get a massage, a foot massage. That sounds fun. You know, I'm pretty stiff and sore from the weekend, and Mom, you want a massage, so let's go to a massage. And then that opened up, like, okay, what are they doing? They're like working with my muscles, they're moving it around. After a massage, I'd always cough, and that brought me back into the origination of massaging the body, moving the lymphatic system, and back into traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine with the pathways of the body. And it opened up this realization of the fascia and working on the fascia. So I'm like, okay, well, what is this? Well, going back to the psychological realm, there's a book called Body Keeps the Score. And it would talk about how if there's a traumatic experience, it would be stored in the body's fascia. And that's what you're getting out. And it's like, okay, well, maybe, sure, I guess. But it wasn't until I had a fascial release in which all of a sudden memories of me at like 9 years old, right before like an injury happened, it just popped into my head as they were pushing on like some fascia in my leg. And like I cried. I was like, what is this? What is that? And it kept happening throughout the body, the fascial work, and came to study it and observe people going through incredible emotional releases, from crying to yelling to just needing to share stories. Like there were some people I were just like so chatty, Like, it's like, doesn't this hurt? Like, we're releasing you. But they just needed to get it out. So I was like, okay, so I guess there's something to fascia. Fascia is the inner connective tissue in our body that holds our muscles and our organs in place. And it also is primarily a water crystalline substance that sends electricity through the body. And then you're like, huh, electricity through the body. Okay, well, let's map those. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, there's a huge density of these things going through here. Oh, the third chakra going through here. The heart chakra going through here. Your solar plexus. And so you're like, oh, okay, maybe there is something to these chakra things. And so continue to explore, continue to understand and observe what to work on. And what was happening too was after getting fascial release, I kind of, did one of these things, where the body, the joints want to reposition one another. And so added chiropractic into that. And that was awesome and incredible. But then if my organs weren't being fixed, then they would pull on the meridians with the fascia that goes through the body. They'd pull on it, and then I'd be back in that same hunched position, and then my bones would eventually make those micro adjustments. And so I had to address my organs and help repair them. And that opened up the exploration of using supplements to repair it. And I went down the path of, at this point, the path of biohacking. I was like, okay, I gotta make the brain awake, I gotta make it aware. I remember the first time I had a coffee that put me into ketosis immediately, and like I started crying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. Like I could see things like just so vivid, so bright, and that was awesome. And so I followed that path of biohacking. But what I realized after a while was, after taking all these supplements, of just getting like, yes, I can think so well, so clear, I can dominate business school, was that after a while, my liver started to hurt. Why does my liver hurt? Why? And then I would get like these big bags under my eyes. I'm like, I feel so alive, but why do my bags under my eyes hurt? And what happened was I was taxing my liver with the diet that I was consuming, as well as processing all the supplements that I was taking. And my adrenals were getting pretty hit hard. Some people say to take extra salt, or eat this or that on a ketogenic diet. And that's great, and ketogenic diet's incredible. There's incredible research happening out there with patients with certain Parkinson's disease and certain neurological diseases, and I feel so alive on it. But the long-term effects, needing to cycle on and off, and is it really what's good for me or best for me, or is it just sort of a passing fad? Kind of made me go back and shift my diet. And I ended up following some pretty key people in the ketogenic movement early on, and followed suit. I had like all their pills that they sold. I was taking like 20 pills a day. Gotta have a little bit of this, had this. And I was like, well, I feel good. Let me self-experiment. Let me just let my body take what it wants and get rid of what it doesn't. I was good for a while, but it created a lot of internal GI stress because I was taking a ton of supplements, and my body has to do something with it. And ultimately what was happening was, because my liver and my adrenals were getting hurt so much, that the patterns in the fascia, the meridians that those are connected to, started to get tightened, which means my body was still tight. So I was back in square one of, hey, I want to fix my posture. In fact, my girlfriend at that time was like, hey, you have really bad posture. You should fix it. And so I was like, yeah, I'm trying to fix it. That's what I'm trying to get back to. And I realized that, one, I probably needed to stretch more. Two, my body was getting older and I needed to take care of it more. And three, I'm not quite sure what I need to do, so let me try something different. So I tried yoga and really got into yoga for a while. And yoga had kind of been this trend that I would do off and on. I wouldn't get into it too intensely. I was one of those people who didn't like stretching and was inflexible and was like, all right, whatever, I'm inflexible, but I can run really well, I'm pretty fast, and I'm good at sports, so I'm fine. But then again, my body was breaking down, so then I was like, let me get some experts to help me. Those experts helped me kind of, but not long term. And then I did some self-testing with the biohacking movement and really taking ownership of my journey. And that was great, but it still didn't quite fix it because I was creating compensatory patterns in my body. So I ended up back at yoga. And I remember doing hot yoga because I'm like, come on, I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to do hot yoga. I'm going to be a man, do like hot yoga and sweat it out because then I'll get a good sweat. And of course that was great for my lymphatic system to sweat, and my body was stretching a little better, a little more. But then it brought up this topic of, well, you just went out drinking with your business school friends last night, or your coworkers for happy hour, and now you're here doing yoga in the morning before work. Your body's not really happy. And so I would sweat, but it would be like a rough sweat. I'm like, man, why am I sweating? And then the sweat would smell, and it became this realization of, oh, I should probably hydrate properly. Duh. And so then it brought up this whole path of hydration. And back at one of the companies that I had created, we were working on helping people, bringing in all these different modalities of healing to find what was going to work and how it could work. And I realized that, there's some sort of like body work involved. There's some sort of nutritional component, supplementation involved. And there is some component of like your bone joints moving. But there's also this thing of your hydration, because people who weren't getting results, what we found was they were chronically dehydrated. And then it's like, duh, the fascia is primarily water, so you need water in there. And when we talk about our diets, we're consuming coffee in the morning, diuretic, and then we're consuming wine at night, dehydrates the body. So that makes sense. We're perpetually dehydrated. And so that brought me to the exploration of water, and that's where I want to leave you today, is the journey that I have taken from the psychological perspective to a neurological perspective to a neurochemical perspective to a bodywork perspective to meridian perspective to a bit of the chakra perspective to the biohacking perspective to hot yoga perspective, not aligned with anything else, and then finally to water and the need for proper hydration. So with that, I'll come back to you and talk to you tomorrow. So I wish you a wonderful day, and I thank you for your time and attention, for allowing me space to share my journey, and I hope that what I am sharing provides specific pathways for you in your journey and experience to go, oh yeah, I've tried that, or oh yeah, I've heard about that. And to really encourage you to go out and experience things, and then to work to create a operating software and a working model that resonates with what you are experiencing in your life. And from that point, I'm excited to catch myself up, catch people up, and create different anchors that people can kind of grab onto as I share the journey, as well as start to get into some really, really incredible science, innovations, discoveries, and things that have come to me in my life that I feel is important to get this foundational basis in there. So with that, I will leave you. Hope you have a great day.